It couldn't get worse, they said. They were idiots. It got way worse. Oklahoma falls 35-9. Welcome in. It's the Sooners on SI post-game podcast. I am Ryan Chapman. That is John Hoover. Yikes.
I wish I had a number of games that I've covered, Oklahoma football games that I've covered. 21 years I've been doing this. Never seen one like that. Never seen Oklahoma fall behind. 5 minutes into the game, 21-0.
This game, it reminded me of 2008 Nebraska, except totally the other way, where you're wondering, did Nebraska get off the bus? Unfortunately, I think it would have been better if Oklahoma didn't get off the bus at times.
I suggested a forfeit when it was 21-0.
It was bad. It was really, really bad. 35-9. The Sooners fall to 4-3 overall in the season, 1-3 in SEC play. And if you're watching this postgame pod, thank you. Welcome. We're sorry. I don't know if we're going to make you feel better, but let's dive all the way into it, guys. Pivotal game for Oklahoma today. Coming out of the Texas game, 34-3. Brent Venables on his coach's show on Monday had talked about Michael Hawkins Jr. being the guy for Oklahoma, but he had also talked about a body of work, which the fact that he was talking about that kind of led us to believe if things didn't go well for Michael Hawkins Jr., the potential was going to be there. The door was going to be open for maybe another quarterback change. You looked at, these were two teams coming into this thing, Hoover, that kind of mirrored themselves. They were going to lean on the defense. Both offenses were sputtering. South Carolina was allegedly the one that had turnover issues, but could be a little bit more explosive. Oklahoma's offense wasn't turning the ball over, at least not under Michael Hawkins. Not as explosive. 3 possessions into the game, turnover. First play of the game, it was Michael Hawkins Jr. trying to force a ball to J.J. Hester. That ended up in an interception. Did not go all the way for a house call, but 4 or 5 plays later, South Carolina punches it in on the short field. Then it went from bad to worse, John. We had highlighted all the quarterback stuff was going to be great, fine and dandy, but this South Carolina defensive front, how was Oklahoma going to block them? Short answer, they didn't. 9 sacks, that is the most since the NCAA has started registering sacks as an official stat in 2000. May not be the worst all time, but 2000 is when they started registering. 9 sacks is what Oklahoma gave up. One of those ended up being a strip sack, Michael Hawkins Jr. on the second drive of the game. Yep. That ended up being a scoop and score. Third drive of the game, big man TD. Third drive of the game, Michael Hawkins Jr. gets planted. He's throwing the ball as he gets planted. The ball never gets to the far sideline. It gets picked off. It looked like a lot of loafs happening by the Oklahoma offense, trying to track down, what was it? It was Amanawari. Nick, I remember his first name, Nick Amanawari. And before the defense had a chance to go back on the field again, Oklahoma down 21-0, just as it was against Tennessee. 3 turnovers is the limit for Brent Venables at quarterback. Yeah. Out goes Michael Hawkins. In comes Jackson Arnold. But, John, just like against Tennessee, by the time the quarterback change happened, the game was over. It didn't matter. The Sooners were not digging out of that hole. The Boo Birds were out. It was an unmitigated disaster in Norman.
The Boo Birds came out after Hawkins came out for the third possession when it was 14-0. And then Jackson Arnold came out for the fourth possession. And they showed him getting ready. On the video board, they showed a tight shot of him getting ready on the sideline. And everybody cheered. And he went in and everybody cheered. And nothing happened. The offense got a little better. And then the offense got a little better more. Right, in the second half, and that was it. It's 35-9. Guys, this is a week after they lose to Texas
34-3.
So a 31-point loss and a 35 minus 9, 26-point loss. We figured that we started going to 1998, right, skimming through the books, and when's the last time they lost back-to-back games that bad? It was 2022. It was 2 years ago.
TCU and Texas. Yeah. Different circumstances there, right? Obviously, the context. Dillon Gabriel exited the game against TCU right before halftime. That was already a blowout. People forget that was already a blowout by the time Dillon Gabriel left that game. And then everything that happened, Texas 2022, don't have to rehash that. The fact of the matter is, John, we have seen some changes here with the offense in particular.
Yeah, they're trying.
They're trying some different things. Brent Venables talked in the midweek on Tuesday. We covered this on our midweek pod. Not a big believer in midseason staff changes, all that stuff. Everybody's been. That's never been the answer. We did see an adjustment today, though. Joe John Finley, the co-offensive coordinator, alongside Seth Luttrell, is typically the guy signaling the plays on the sideline. He was up in the press box today. Brent Venables, after the game, we tried to ask him 2 or 3 different ways, tried to extract basically, was Joe John calling plays, Seth Luttrell. Seth Luttrell's the one we talked to in postgame. We have talked to the play caller in postgame, except for when Ted Roof spoke. So Brent Venables said that was a move, maybe help them see things a little bit better, see the field better, try to make those adjustments.
In the press box.
Instead of having to be on the headset, they're right next to each other trying to make those adjustments. He even said, if there's a big change, you guys will be the first to know, alluding to play calling, staff changes, things like that. But if that's not evidence enough, John, that my reaction to that was Seth Luttrell is a very experienced coach. He's been the OC a couple of different spots, all that stuff, a head coach. That's not a guy that needs help seeing the field. That is Brent Venables very nicely saying, we're trying a lot different. It still might have been Seth Luttrell calling the plays, but at the very least, Brent was saying, I need Joe John, paraphrase, he did not say this, I need Joe John and Seth right next to each other. I don't need this to be over the headset. If they need to get the iPad, if they need to talk through while the defense is out there what they need to do, this thing needs to get better. And whether it was Michael Hawkins Jr. or Jackson Arnold, it was slightly better under Jackson Arnold. The offensive line's so bad, it doesn't matter what happens the rest of the year at quarterback, at coordinator, whatever. This offensive line is putrid, and they're healthy, and they made a bunch of changes today looking for different answers.
Yeah, Brent talked about the extra guy in the press box, in the coach's box, totally removed from the press box. We don't get to be around the coaches during the game. He said the iPads are great. Having iPads on the sidelines are great, but having another set of eyes in the coach's box, looking down on the field, talking about coverages, talking about changes, talking about adjustments was something that they wanted to do. Okay, so that's one adjustment they made. Another was obviously bringing in another quarterback. Jackson Arnold, say what you want about his first 4 starts. They were not good. However, he was able to move the football a little bit. Even with this offensive line, even with a bunch of receivers hurt, he was able to move the football in those first 4 games up until the time he started turning the football over on a catastrophic level. Well, when the second guy, Michael Hawkins, comes in and begins turning the football over, also on a catastrophic level, again, I've never seen that before. It was almost 21 points directly off turnovers. Instead, it was 14 plus a short field. 5 plays Oklahoma played on offense, and the defense goes out there down 21-0. They played 5 plays, and what was the stat? You said they were down. They were down with the offense on the field by 14-0, but they were down with the defense on the field only 10-0.
By
Crazy.
the end of start of the second quarter, Oklahoma from its own 21 goes for it on the fake punt. This is after Jackson Arnold should have picked up the first down. He hit Bauer Sharp in the hands. After Jackson Arnold rolled out of the pocket, Bauer Sharp dropped the football. They run the fake punt. It goes straight back to Bauer Sharp. Jacoby Johnson doesn't block his guy. Bauer Sharp isn't able to make anything happen. They actually lose yardage. So the defense had gotten 2 short fields on their scoring drives. They held for the field goal. With the defense on the field at that point, it was 10-0. With the offense on the field for Oklahoma, it was 14-0 in favor of South Carolina because of the scoop and score, because of the pick six. Just a disaster. The defense played fine, well. They did everything except force a turnover, considering what they were given.
South Carolina team that comes in averaging 2 turnovers a game.
South Carolina ended with 252 total yards, less than Oklahoma. They didn't turn the ball over. But I also think, too, this is not going to turn into hammer the defense power hour. Once South Carolina was up 21-0, the only turnover Oklahoma had a chance to force was a fumble, because just as we saw against Tennessee and just as we saw against Texas in the second half, a smart coaching staff on the other sideline, Shane Beamer, said, we gave Oklahoma enough rope for them to do it to themselves. There is no reason to do anything else the rest of this game. They didn't let Sellers push the ball downfield. The only hijinks they got onto is South Carolina's kicking game has been really bad. It was a long field goal, would have been a long field goal attempt at the very end of the first half. They tried a fake field goal there, knowing that if that fails, you're going into halftime. This is not going to snowball anything else. South Carolina did a really good job of basically saying, we are not going to let Lenora Sellers hold the ball in the pocket. It was only quick passing game from there. So I don't even really blame the defense. If you want to blame for not getting a fumble, I guess, but the Sellers fumbles have been when he's holding the ball in the pocket, and South Carolina didn't put him in a spot to even do that.
Right, and you can thank Shane Beamer for that, I guess, being a nice guy. He went for 2-point conversion once. He went for a fake field goal once.
And it was a swing and gate 2-point conversion.
Yes.
That, hey, again,
very clever.
If we want to talk about, this is something I tried to point out, not with you, but on radio during Texas, and people just, whatever. The offense is awful. We're going to get to that. There are going to be changes at some point, probably in December. We'll get to that. Last week against Texas, you had Robert Spears-Jennings not being on the field when a turnover happened. You had a late decision on a field goal when Tyler Keltner is already slow, and it rushed that, and he missed it. That is not the offense is inept. We know that. Seth Luttrell was a bad hire. Results-based, it is what it is.
Sure.
Bad hire. That is game management stuff that Oklahoma is not doing, and they haven't done for 3 years. The swinging gate, regardless of if it's a 7-6 ball game, a 32-3 ball game, you should not be
completely.
You should not be total. Like, they had no clue what was happening.
No
the OU special teams, the OU defense against, and I know that they've worked on that because Shane Beamer's special teams grew. That's what everybody knows.
Yep.
That is more game management stuff of a team that looks flustered and chaotic, and a sideline that is flustered and chaotic, and a head coach that is flustered and chaotic.
Yeah, 3 years, 2.5 years of Brent Venables. Teams have come in. You've seen, he just named a couple of instances. We've seen it throughout the years, the previous 2 seasons. Unprepared, that's the question that I asked right off the top of the press conference. Brent, you said, congratulations to South Carolina. They came in, and he said they were very well prepared. They were ready to play. He said they were ready to play. I said, how surprised are you? To what level of surprise were you that you were not ready to play? And he said, well, essentially, I'm going to paraphrase. He said, I think we were ready to play, but when you hit those turnovers, that changes everything. And that's true. And you might have had the greatest game plan since the Super Bowl, right? And you might have had the best 5 practices of any college football team in year of our Lord 2024, right? But to say that we were prepared and it's 21-0 5 minutes into the game, turnover or no turnover, the game played out. It continued to play out, like you said, with the swinging gate, with a number of other things, events that happened during the game. Oklahoma was not prepared. And guys said, Robert Spears-Jennings, I asked him, I said, did you all have a good week of practice? He said, I thought we had a really good week of practice. He said, we had our time against the offense, and the offense had their time against us. And, the post-game kind of tenor being, this was a complete shocker. We were not, the players and coaches saying we were not prepared for that level of, surprise, I guess. I think South Carolina caught them by surprise completely. And when you've got the big man scoring a touchdown, and then you've got a deep safety running back 66 yards weaving through traffic, you can point to one thing after another on this team. If Brent came in that door right now, I'd say, Brent, sit down. We're going to talk. I don't think you were prepared. I don't think they were prepared.
And here's the thing, John. They're starting to lose the fan base. I don't know if starting,
100%.
and I don't blame them. Because here is my issue with the game. And I get it. Once you go down 21-0, Brent Venables talked about all you can do is try and scratch things out one play at a time. Mm-hmm. He's right. I get that. South Carolina did not throw some ungodly, unimaginable looks that we haven't seen at Oklahoma on those first 3 drives.
That's right.
Straight up, we talked about it all week. Kyle Kennard came into this game with 7.5 sacks. Dylan Stewart's going to be a top 5 pick, top 10 pick as long as he doesn't get hurt. Sky's the limit on that kid. 7.5 sacks, 3.5 sacks. The defensive line, we talked about this.
Yep. They're really good.
The defensive front, the front seven's really good. Brent Venables has talked about it for 2.5, 3 weeks. He dropped it into a couple different coaches' shows, talked about South Carolina, talked about it on Tuesday. There weren't some massive wrinkles that South Carolina threw up there. They beat the ass of the offensive line for 4 quarters. It didn't matter if Jake Taylor and Jacob Sexton were your tackles to start the game. Michael Tarquin then came in once Heath Ozeda was yanked. That was a 3rd drive situation. Tarquin and Taylor were your left and right tackle, with Sexton back at left guard.
Yep.
They got smothered.
Spencer Brown.
Then you had Spencer Brown come in for Jake Taylor. That didn't work.
Look at Howland play.
Howland came into the game late. That it didn't really matter. All that stuff.
But your centers, you had your most experienced center back, Troy Everett, back from injury. Played a series last week against Texas. Comes in, plays today, gets his first start. I'm not going to sit here and grade the center and say he played poorly, but he's the guy that starts every play and calls out protections and whatnot. So he's probably rusty. You can't come down on him. But they did. They had two different centers. I don't think Bates played today, did he?
Well, in the stuff that now nothing mattered after the third series. Let's just take the first half. The first half is where there was a point in the second half where they were just trying everything. Caleb Hicks gets his first legit run. Jacob Jordan, who we're going to talk about, becomes Oklahoma's closest bid to get a 100-yard receiver. That didn't happen. Jackson Arnold did finally throw for over 200 yards. But in the period where they weren't just like throwing everything at the fan just to see what sticks, they were actually trying to make adjustments to the game on the line. That's what was going on. Yeah. And the running game looked the exact same as we've seen for 7 weeks, right? It was ineffective. It was Javante Barnes.
Javante Barnes looked pretty good.
Yeah, he's averaging 4.1 yards a carry. He's still yet to break a tackle.
Javante Barnes looks serviceable. He would have gone over 100 if that one hadn't been called back.
Well, if his forearm wasn't if Javante Barnes wasn't down by contact, you're right, John. He would have run for over 100 yards. Right. Correct. not talking about.
They did have a guy throw for 200 today. We talked about no 200s passing, no 100s rushing or receiving. They did finally. Jackson Arnold, 225 yards passing.
Congrats.
I can scratch that off my list now.
You won't have to write Southern Miss in another story the rest of the year. Congratulations.
Or Wyoming.
But I mean, you look at the offense, John. It's the same stuff, right? Deion Burks was a game time decision. He warmed up sort of in the stretching line. Once you got to the receivers going out there and running routes on air in pregame, it became pretty apparent that Burks was close, but he wasn't going to be able to play. So it's the same group of guys. It feels like there's been no development. No. At some point, John.
Zero.
I think everyone understands the wide receiver issue. I don't think anyone in the fan base is screaming and yelling about Zion Kearney or Zion Reagan's not being a Biletnikoff guy.
Right.
Where have any of those guys gotten better? They've had 7 games worth of practice, running with the ones. This isn't if Burks and Farouk had gone down on Tuesday and Wednesday in practice, it is forgivable for the wide receiver unit to look lost.
I agree.
Jalil Farouk hasn't played since the second offensive snap of the year.
Yep.
Burks has been out since the Tennessee game. You've had a bye week since then. You're not seeing development at wide receiver. The offensive line has been healthier, the healthiest it's been, and it's gone from waiting for guys to get back for health, John, to just rattling through guys. It feels like Bill Beanbo's on the merry-go-round once again. All of that stuff is a disaster, and that's how you end up with Jackson Arnold getting sacked 8 times, Michael Hawkins Jr. getting sacked 1 time. Again, 9 sacks, the most allowed by an Oklahoma offensive line since they started keeping the stat in 2000.
Yeah, also I think a school record for South Carolina, too.
Yeah.
9 sacks in 1 game.
It's the most since they've been in the SEC. I saw that was out there
since
they joined the conference at least.
Okay, so it's also how you get Jacob Jordan, a walk-on and a true freshman, coming out, making his basically season debut. I think he's played some receiver in one or two of the non-conference games. He's done some stuff on kickoff return and so on and so forth. But he basically, guys, was the best receiver on the team today. And by best receiver on the team, I mean 6 catches for 86 yards. He had a 27-yard long. He had 29 yards running after the catch. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you that here's how I pictured it in my head. Jacob Jordan went up to Brent Venables and said, this, of course, didn't happen. This is in my sick and diseased head. Coach, put me at receiver. For God's sake, I've seen enough drops. We've seen enough busted routes. We've seen enough incompletions. Put me at receiver, and I'll show these guys how it's done. That's what it felt like when he was out there doing those, getting real low in his break. And he's 5'9", I think, but he's getting real low in his break and getting separation and getting out of it quick. Those are actual routes run by a college football wide receiver. Sounds stupid, sounds totally basic, but that's something that we haven't seen from this position group all year. He was the best. He wasn't just the best receiver today. His performance today was the best receiver performance of the entire year.
Yeah.
That's a true freshman walk-on.
we're talking about Jaquez Petaway in the second half against Tennessee.
Yeah.
Jacob Jordan against South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
J.J. Hester catching 3 balls against those are our nominees. If we're doing a after 7 games best wide receiver performance award.
Mm-hmm.
Tire fire. Absolute tire fire. So
I don't get it. Those are 4-star kids, recruits. Why have they not been developed?
And again, it's I know that a lot of people, and by a lot of people, I mean the person I probably talked to the most is Brady Trantham, which means that he has talked about 2005 over and over again.
He's so mad today.
I actually think he's dissociating, which is where the fan base is. I think a lot of people in the fan base are dissociating. 2005, they were bad, but you developed a lot of those guys, and they kind of got a little bit better toward the end of the year. I'm not seeing this group get better
toward the middle of the year.
Yeah, I'm just not. You covered it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing this group get better. Part of that, I think, is the offensive line, and so we've talked about all the other issues, which is why we're going to circle back through to the quarterbacks. Okay. Jackson Arnold, he finishes 18 of 36 for 225, 1 touchdown. It was the 54-yarder to Brennan Thompson. Michael Hawkins ended up
nice catch, all that stuff.
Yeah, Michael Hawkins just ended up 3 of 5 for the 2 picks, 18 yards. Brent Venables, after the game, gave a very similar statement to what he had said after the Tennessee game. We'll evaluate it this week. That week of Auburn, it went to Michael Hawkins Jr. before there was even a practice. Monday morning is when the team was informed. Brent Venables announced it Monday night, but it happened Monday morning. I don't know if this week is going to be similar or not, but I think, John, you need to stick with Jackson Arnold. I think you need to stick with him the rest of the year, for better or worse, barring an injury. Here's why. Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins Jr., both those guys are mobile. Michael Hawkins Jr. is twitchier, and that was a lot of he is going to be the most mobile. Jackson Arnold's not a statue, but we've seen in a game against Auburn, Michael Hawkins Jr. didn't force anything. He didn't really take anything other than the one shot to J.J. Hester, and against a bad football team in Auburn, that was enough to keep Oklahoma in the game and keep the defense within striking distance. But it still took Peyton Thorne not understanding on 2 different RPOs, throwing the ball, letting Oklahoma punt the ball. And then it took Peyton Thorne again being in what was a bad play call, all that stuff, the perfect play call from Zach Alley. That is how Oklahoma has won their only SEC game. The other SEC games have been no contest by halftime. No. Tennessee was over at half, Texas was over at half, and South Carolina over at halftime. Jackson Arnold is at least pushing the ball down the field. Today, under the most duress he's seen in his career, he was the safest with the football while still trying to make stuff happen. It's all going to be bad. It's an awful offense. The offense isn't going to get better. There's going to be offensive staff change at the end of the year, though, Hoove. And they have to find out. The Brent Venables era, in large part, is going to hinge on 2 things now. One, what this offensive staff hire looks like at the end of the year, because Venables – his buyout is in the ballpark of $44 million. I don't think that Oklahoma is going to pay that. Maybe with the road they have ahead, at Ole Miss, at Mizzou, home against Bama, at LSU, maybe it gets so bad that buyout happens. If I were betting today, though, the offensive staff is clean house. You're going to have to go out and find an OC. That OC is going to be putting his job on the line to come work with Brent Venables, because if he's coming in and it goes poorly, the staff's getting clean to everybody in 2025. That OC needs to know if he's working with 5-star Jackson Arnold as a second-year starter, or if you need to go find a quarterback in the portal if I'm going to put my job on the line to come to this Oklahoma staff next offseason, or this offseason.
Okay, so in the post-game press conference and post-game interviews, y'all remember last week when the question came up, have you talked to Jackson about redshirting? Yes, he and I have had that conversation. Well, Jackson talked about it after the game tonight. He talked about his conversation with Brent Venables. And Venables on Tuesday didn't really dive into it, right? He said, we've had conversations. A little bit. We hypothesize that this is what the conversation probably was. Hey, coach, if you're just using me for mop-up duty, I don't want to do it. Yeah. If you need me to come in and play a game, if Michael Hawkins Jr. gets hurt, if there needs to be a quarterback change, I'm game. That's exactly what Jackson Arnold said. It was basically like, he said, I don't want to come in and take any worthless snaps. Yeah, meaningless snaps. But if you need me, I'll be there for you. Which I think is, in today's era of college football, I think that's about as level-headed, fine. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I don't think that means that Arnold's quitting on the team. He basically just saying, hey, if Michael Hawkins Jr. is rocking and rolling and it's awesome,
don't put me in there in the fourth quarter against Maine.
Yep.
And I think that's totally fair. I also think that means that it's not a lost cause. I think if Jackson Arnold has more success down the stretch here and you want to roll with him, I don't know what his relationship is with the coaching staff. I don't know what he's going to look at. But I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion that Jackson Arnold plays the rest of these games and just hits the portal because he got benched after 4.
It's tenuous, I think, at best. And I think it's a little bit of a sensitive area, although Jackson kind of pulled the Band-Aid off and showed everybody tonight his wound, which is, he said it was the most difficult few weeks of his life being the backup, having had those turnovers against Tennessee, having been benched, and then having to sit and watch. He said he did learn sitting on the bench. He did gain a different perspective watching Michael Hawkins play, but at the same time, it ate him up. He said he had to lean on family and friends and his girlfriend, people who were close to him, to get through those tough times. Can you imagine being a Johnny 5-star coming into Oklahoma and they got all those statues behind the stadium over here of all those Heisman Trophy winners? You're going to be next. Well, it didn't work out that way, but here he is back on the field. I thought it was interesting that he stayed in a state of readiness, to come into a game where it's 21-0 in the first quarter and finish and take 8 sacks and still become the only 200-yard passer that Oklahoma has had this season. I admire Jackson Arnold's ability to stay ready, to be a professional about what he's doing. I thought that was really good. Did he have a great game? No, he didn't have a great game. Is he going to have any great games later in the season? We don't know. Maybe. If he gets some receivers healthy, maybe. But just the fact that he had that moment against Tennessee and then was cut loose basically from the starting lineup, buried right on the depth chart, and then he comes back in and he plays the best he played as well today as any Oklahoma quarterback has all season.
Yeah, and this is
one of them.
Yeah, this is what's going to go back to the Tennessee game, and I know people are tired of hearing this, but there's so much wrong with this offense, personnel-wise, scheme, all that stuff. No quarterback's going to come in and have a ton of success. Yeah. It's all grading on a curve. We get that, but you can start throwing the young guys in, and like whether it be Eddie Pierre-Louis, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They're going to need 4 or 5 new offensive linemen starting next year, whether that be portal guys right now, whether that be someone that
needs some seasoning,
whether that be like a Jacob Sexton is going to end up like he's your left tackle, like whatever that, like this combo can't come back next year and have any success in the SEC. We get that, but you can move pieces around, things like that. You got to have an evaluation of what Jackson Arnold is. A new OC, there's going to be a new OC. There has to be a new OC. The way that this is going, Venables' buyout might be too high. The offensive staff's is not. So heads are going to have to roll for what this season is going to become. We'll talk about that here in a second. But you've got to have some sort of evaluation for the new OC to either say, this is what Jackson Arnold did. We're going to be super aggressive, getting you offensive linemen, a bunch of these wide receivers. Jalil Farouk's going to have a chance to come back. We'll see if Nick Anderson comes back. We're talking 2025 as a guy that's really going to have 1 year of film. Is that going to be enough with the NFL? All that stuff. You're going to have those pieces there. You're bleeding Taylor Tatum, a former number 1 overall running back in a class, all that stuff. Javonte Barnes, if you're in a serviceable offense, I think Javonte Barnes can be great. He's not going to be the savior, but like, you're going to have to fix the offensive line. It's going to be about going to an OC and saying you've got this to work with, or you can go and try and chase down an experienced guy in the portal. We're not going to know that until you see what Jackson Arnold does, though.
Yeah, he's got some decisions to make. Brent's got a decision to make about his staff, which way he wants to go. The offensive coordinator that he's going to hire, presumably in December, is going to have a decision to make about coming to Oklahoma, one, but also is he going to reach back into his contacts? Is he going to reach back into his recent past of guys he's coached, guys he's recruited? Hey, Brent, if I come to play, if I come to call plays for you at Oklahoma, I really want to bring this quarterback with me.
That's what Jeff Lebby did.
Exactly. And then Jackson Arnold's going to have to look at all that and decide, do I want to come back? Do I want to be JFA, Jackson Arnold, Johnny 5-star? Or do I want to start over somewhere else?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I was blown away, like really impressed with Jackson Arnold's postgame.
Yeah,
postgame comments does not make a Heisman Trophy winner.
Watch the video because his interview is really, really good.
Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com if you're into that. If you're a YouTuber, John Hoover Media on YouTube. If you're on the front page, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com, there's one big file that says watch Oklahoma Sooners postgame press conferences. That's the link to everyone that spoke tonight. Jackson talked about Going into this game down 21-0, he said in a way he felt more free than he did, and he was just trying to have the mindset that you just got to have fun, because I think that the unsaid part is the game was over. I then asked him, basically, hey, he was pretty introspective, but I didn't think I was actually going to get an answer on this question of, when you look back and reflect on your first 4 starts, that pressure weigh on you? And he was like, yes, absolutely. The pressure of, paraphrasing again, being QB1 at Oklahoma, that has high expectations, whether they're realistic or not, for what you can do, all that stuff. That him being able to be on the sidelines for the last couple of weeks, that's where he said he saw things through a little bit of a different lens. I am fascinated by what we get out of Jackson Arnold the rest of the way. He needs to be the guy, because, again, they're going to lose probably all these games outside of Maine. The rest of the way, it's not going to look great. It's going to be ugly.
We're calling it right now, 5-7.
5-7. That's what we'll dive through it. But I think that it's really interesting to say, could that be the learning moment that you thought you had with maybe a Spencer Rattler in the 2020 Texas game? Because he did turn it on and play a lot better. Again, different stress. We get it. All that stuff. Don't yell at the comments quite yet. But you got to figure it out, because you have a 5-star quarterback on the roster. If Jackson Arnold enters the transfer portal at the end of the season, chances are he's probably going to be the highest rated recruit in the transfer portal. He may not be the most productive quarterback, stuff like that, but as far as just recruiting ratings go, he might be the highest rated guy in the portal.
The National Gatorade Player of the Year in the transfer portal? Seriously? Yeah, that's where they end up. By the way, we're watching the Tennessee. We already watched that Tennessee game.
Georgia and Texas.
Georgia and Texas is on the TV right next to us. Georgia is stomping Texas. Not something that I am surprised by. I kind of picked this game anyways, 20-0.
John.
Going into halftime, Quinn Ewers is out, Arch Manning is in, and I think Arch Manning just fumbled. So,
John, there's an F1 race in Austin. Of course the dogs are locked in.
Right.
They're in their element.
They are speeding down the road.
So
looks like Georgia's getting ready to score again, 20-0.
They're on the 30. It's incredible. Carson back. Shout out to the Cavender.
Anyways, we've been sued now by Disney for doing play-by-play of the.
Yeah, on delay. So yeah, Oklahoma now 1-3 in the SEC. We've mentioned it. Tennessee was a no contest. Texas was an embarrassment. This was a TKO in the first 5 minutes of the game. The only team Oklahoma has beat might be one of the 2 teams that are maybe worse than them. Mississippi State, Auburn, OU. That's your seller of the SEC. Sift through that however you want. You sort it out. I don't really care. Auburn's been in all those games and lost them all. Oklahoma beat Auburn. Figure it out. It doesn't matter.
Here's
it's
how bad. I've decided. I figured out. It's a complicated matrix. You got to use the yarn and the push pins. Auburn is so bad. 0-4 in the conference play now. Auburn is so bad that they called for an orange out, and they still couldn't beat OU.
How bad?
If you wear orange, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if you wear orange, you've got a really good shot at beating Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, Texas, 2 out of the last 3 years. Oklahoma State, 2 out of the last 3 years.
Today, Auburn lost.
Auburn had an orange out, and they still couldn't beat them.
Today, Auburn lost to a team that had its quarterback leave the stadium.
Oh, crap, I forgot. No sarcasm, sorry.
Yeah, we're not allowed to do that. We have to be buttoned up and professional. That's what you want. That's what you want.
You know who you are.
Cook left the game, got an MRI, came back, beat Auburn.
Golly.
That happened today. That's the only team Oklahoma's beat. Okay, so next week they're going to Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin is going to do what happens on the field might be actually illegal in the state of Mississippi. He is not going to call off the dogs like Shane Beamer did and Sark did and Josh Heupel did.
Yeah.
They're going to come back. They're going to beat Maine. Maybe. Maine, put it all over Villanova. They're going to beat Maine. They're going to go to Missouri. I still don't think Missouri, I think Missouri is like a between 15 and 25. I don't think they're this juggernaut. They're going to kick Oklahoma's ass if they play anything like this. They might beat the bye week. I think they might do that.
They won't lose.
They won't lose. Alabama, Jalen Milroe, dear God, what he's going to do to this team, because the defense is going to be on the field over and over and over again. And then you don't want to be in Baton Rouge and things. We'll be at Baton Rouge. We're going to eat some great food. This team is, barring a miracle, and again, it's college football, week to week, all that stuff. What we've seen, this team's going to go 5-7. So, Seth Luttrell, he fell on a sword once again. Seth Luttrell's not going to be the offensive coordinator of Oklahoma going into 2025. I think that you're going to have wholesale staff changes. And I think, honestly, John, if it wasn't a $44 million price tag, I think Brent would be on the hot seat. I put him on the hot seat today.
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair. Somebody asked me, two people asked me today, one on the comments and one on Twitter, who's Oklahoma's coach next year? It's Brent Venables. He just signed a contract extension, $44 million buyout.
But the fact that we know that off the top of our head shows you where we're at in this season.
Right.
That shows you where you're at. And we'll have plenty of time to digest it and all that stuff. But this is about to be
23-0 at half. They got Arch Manning in the game, though. Texas has them right where they want them.
woo lads. Sorry, I'm just processing. There's a lot happening. The outlook is bad. I mean, we're back to 2022.
I'm trying to be positive here.
Spin this bad boy, Hoover.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Spin it.
Maybe we should bring Randall in to give us some ideas on recruiting, because that's where, I mean, guys, I want to, before I get positive, the number one quarterback in the country, okay, in 2024, the number one running back in the country, Tatum, in 2024, and the number one tight end in the country in the 2025 class, who's in the 2024 class now. He can't get on the field. Arnold has been benched.
Why?
Tatum can't block.
Why can't Devon Mitchell get on the field, by the way? I know that.
That's a great question.
I know that we went through the.
He walked by me in the postgame, and I'm like, who is that? And he turned around, I'm like, that's Devon Mitchell. Oh, my God.
Devon Mitchell. Sorry, not Devon Jordan. Yeah, Mitchell, not Jordan.
He's
my
amazing.
Fault.
Looking. He's amazing looking.
I know that the postgame podcast has gotten some weird places.
I'm just
I'm
saying,
kidding. I'm kidding.
If they're not putting him on the field, it must be for a reason, because he looks the part.
Brent Venables talked about it.
He's my first guy off the bus.
He clearly was a guy that was not mentally ready for the college football part of it, not coming in, being in the right shirts for workouts, all that stuff. I understand.
Making it to class.
Yeah, I
turning
understand.
in your assignments on time. All that.
Not rewarding that from a program aspect.
This team's desperate, though.
They're desperate. They're looking for.
They're so desperate that Jacob Jordan can come in and be your best receiver.
They're desperate. The outlook is back to 2022. When it comes to the back half of that season, a lot of our conversations were dominated by this season is lost. What can you gain? Lessons to go into 2023, and can you keep this class together? Here are a couple of big differences between the close of 2022 and how 2024 is going to come to a close. In 2022, you were selling this is year one. Yes. You were selling, I didn't recruit these guys. I gave a lot of them grace. Mm-hmm. We're going to get another year in the system. We're going to attack the portal, all that stuff. And everything was shiny and new, and you're talking about we're going to be in the SEC. This year, you're in year three. Brent Venables has made an offensive coordinator hire that was a disaster. Yep. And hand up, I was fine with the hire at the time. Obviously, we all were wrong. Venables, us, we all were wrong. That hire's a disaster. The recruits are going to have seen a whole year of getting your head bashed in the SEC. So anyone that wants to pick up the phone, Texas want to call Michael Fasusi right now and be like, hey, big guy, I know that you're locked in, and I know that you seem like a really strong character guy, but have you seen Oklahoma's not SEC ready? Look, they got blown out in a bunch of these conference games, and now, again, when you talk about hiring an offensive coordinator, I can't stress this enough. Brent Venables is going to enter 2025 on the hot seat.
Yep.
If he gets fired, the whole staff is blown up, right? So if you're leaving your spot now to come be the OC at Oklahoma, and it might be out of your hands, this offensive line might be so far gone for the next 2 or 3. Because look at Texas. They had a really talented offensive line 2 years ago and 3 years ago. They were all true freshmen. It was a bad unit. They're great now, bad unit then. So even if Oklahoma keeps this offensive line class together somehow and plays all those guys, it's going to be a bad unit. That's just how offensive line works. That guy who comes in, the OC, the mythical OC, John Hoover, you're the OC. You're going to come in and you're going to demand, I need to have my guys at O-line coach, running back coach, wide receiver coach. If I'm putting my career trajectory on the line by maybe being on a staff that gets busted up, it's not going to be what Jeff Levy came in and did, which is basically inherit the exact same staff. Just say, I'm going to be the figurehead. They're going to want to make a bunch of changes. Does that mean Bill Bedenbaugh stays or not? That's up to that next OC. You're going to be risking this whole class. That is what is so scary about the outlook of the end of the 2024 season as opposed to 2022. And you're not playing the Big 12 schedule from last year, next year. You're just flipping this bad boy around and beating your head against the wall again.
Well, something Brent has taken a lot of criticism for is a quote-unquote nepotism aspect toward hiring. Okay, he brought in a former Sooner to coach running backs who was already here. He brought in a former Sooner to coach tight ends who was already here, right? He just retained Joe John Finley.
He retained everybody on staff. Levy was the only on the offensive staff.
Yep. Yeah. Except for he brought in Emmett Jones, didn't he?
What?
Yeah, because Dennis Simmons left.
When Brent Venables came in, he retained every single piece of the offensive staff. Simmons left, but he split his defensive line. Right. Anyway, it was Cale Gundy, Bill Bedenbaugh, DeMarco Murray, Joe John Finley, Jeff Levy.
Right.
That was your offensive staff.
Right.
All those guys were there except for Jeff. So Jeff came in.
Yeah. So there's, and then
It's late,
Seth.
sorry.
And then Seth comes in, former OU football player, right? Another one. As the offensive coordinator. So he's taken a lot of criticism for hiring his buddies, hiring former Sooners, hiring guys who are familiar with the programs, on and on. It's really going to be incumbent on him to make some big boy hires in the offseason. Here we are 7 games into the season, and we're talking about who he's going to hire. But, yeah, it's time for Brent to make some big boy hires, meaning some guys that he doesn't necessarily know. He's going to have to conduct an open search for several jobs, and then interview a bunch of dudes, and then hire the best candidate, not the best candidate who used to play at OU.
And to be fair to Brent, it's not going to be a popular statement today. You look at guys he was familiar with on the defensive side of the ball. Todd Bates, excellent.
Yep.
Miguel Chavis has done a pretty good job. Oklahoma still had 5 sacks today. So
Zach Alley was a good hire.
Yeah, I'm certainly not walking out of this going the defensive ends are the problem for Oklahoma. That's Zach Alley. That was an evaluation after 2 years of Ted Roof. Brent Venables said, "I need someone that can actually do it." Zach Alley's that guy. Zach Alley's been a great hire. I think
Jay Malai's been a pretty good.
I think Zach Alley's a guy. If you were picking, hey, if Brent Venables was no longer the head coach of Oklahoma, I think a lot of Oklahoma fans would be like, we could keep Zach Alley as defensive coordinator. I'm fine with what's happening right. You know what I mean? Like one of those things. So there have been moments where that's been fine, but now he's going to have to go into his coaching Rolodex and see what that looks like.
It's got to be uncomfortable for a newish head coach like Brent, because you're gonna hire somebody that you know. You're going to hire somebody that you trust and somebody that you're familiar with, somebody who you know is going to put in the work, knows the source material, is a good whatever, offensive line coach or whatever. You have to. You can't just open the doors and say, okay, whoever wants to come and coach, come and throw your resume in here and I'll look at them and I'll get back to you by Christmas. That's not how it works. That's never how it works. So he's going to have to hire somebody. But he's going to hire somebody that he's very familiar with, that he's worked with before, that somebody that gets the Dabo Swinney seal of approval or whatever it is.
The last time Oklahoma's offense, and this offense is worse, but the last time Oklahoma's offense was this dire straits that you were going to have staff changes. Even Bob Stoops, who has had night and day and another day more success as a head coach than Brent Venables has, Bob had to say see ya to Heupel and Norvell, and he had to go outside of himself. Mm-hmm. He called a guy he was familiar with in Sonny Dykes and said, what do you think about this Lincoln Riley guy? The numbers look great, but what do you know about him? He brought Lincoln Riley in. He married Lincoln Riley with an offensive staff that Bob was familiar with. That was how he married that together, right? A lot of that offensive staff, it was just Lincoln at the top. I don't know how much of this offensive staff you want to retain. If I'm making the decision,
it's a tough call. We're not even talking about the game anymore, but where are you going to find somebody that recruits receivers better than Emmett Jones? Where are you going to find somebody that recruits running backs better than DeMarco Murray? Are those guys developing them as well as they're recruiting them? Maybe, maybe not.
I would say,
and it's hard to be critical of Emmett Jones. His 5 most talented players are not even playing.
Emmett Jones is the only one that gets a pass for me.
I kind of agree.
And even with some of the development, I truly don't know how much development has happened. And we're not seeing it because the offensive line is so bad.
Correct.
And how much that development is gone. I don't know the play call. I don't know if Zion Kearney is supposed to be 10 yards downfield, he's in the right spot, and he's getting in someone's dying in the pocket, or if he's running the wrong route. So I don't know that. DeMarco Murray. Let's talk about DeMarco Murray. I don't think Kennedy Brooks got better under DeMarco Murray. I thought Kennedy Brooks was good, and he was good anyway. And he was good before DeMarco, and he was good after DeMarco.
Mm-hmm.
What's the big development success story for DeMarco Murray?
Getting Eric Gray.
It's Eric Gray
to grow that next step from being from a 700-yard rusher to a 1,300-yard rusher.
Here's the question that we've talked about off camera before. Was that DeMarco Murray doing a good job with Eric Gray, or was that Eric Gray being more suited to Levy's running schemes than Lincoln's running schemes?
Yeah, that's fair. I
think that's a real question. So, and DeMarco had a lot of recruiting misses before he got Taylor Tatum. Oh, by the way.
Yep, they did.
Bill Bedenbaugh. He's got the track record. He's got the class. This unit is a disaster. There's a bunch of reasons for that.
What do you do about it?
The scholarship allocation in 20 and 21 and all that stuff, I get it. But Bill still missed on the guys he did sign in those classes development-wise. He's been able to paper it together with portal classes. This offensive line, though, the issue is it is so bad. This is not like a 2 or 3 year overhaul project. Brittman doesn't have 2 or 3 years, so that's an open question there. Joe John Finley, I'm not retaining. We've discussed it. Seth Luttrell, I'm not retaining. Someone's got to have to wear this season. That's really uncomfortable. That the only guy that I'm just like, if the new OC wants to keep Bedenbaugh, fine. If the new OC wants to keep Emmett Jones, I'm in. Everybody else, I would have real questions about the decision-making of the new OC. Like, real questions about it if they're keeping any of the other guys right now.
Yeah. I don't know.
I know it's
in the
tough.
Weeds of the future, man.
Well, that's all you can do. It was that bad.
It was that bad.
This was the worst halftime deficit Oklahoma has had in Norman America since John
1998.
Blake. John Blake. You got it, boys. You got it, boys and girls. That's how bad it is. So I think we've hit that. Gold star to Zach Schmidt. He won his job back. He did everything he needed to do on his off-field goal attempt. Gold star to Jacob Jordan. Congrats. Anything else we missed?
Danny Stutzman, what do you have, 13 tackles?
Sure. It's another week.
Your defense had 6 sacks.
Yeah, it's another week. We're not going to talk about the defense. Stutzman had 16 total tackles,
16.
1.5 tackles for loss. Kip Lewis, secondary team, 8. They finished with, like you said, 5 sacks, 6 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. The game was over by the time the defense got on the field for the second time.
That's right.
Again, could they have forced a fumble? Sure. I don't even think they were in a spot for an interception to happen because the offense was so god-awful. So this is going to be another week where, unfortunately for the defense, I think I'm going to say 10 words total on them because they're totally absolved from whatever this S show was out there on Owen Field. Sorry if that was not professional. I said S, though, not the other thing. The other thing was flying during the press box, though. Otherwise, John, Oklahoma, your reward is on to Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. On the road. Good luck.
I feel like there was a lot of fans eager to go to the Auburn game because it was new and it was exciting. And, yeah, they had just lost to Tennessee. But, hey, who doesn't lose to Tennessee when Tennessee's good, right? People were excited about going to Auburn and being on the loveliest village on the plains. And, this is going to be great. I get the feeling that people are like, screw Oxford. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm excited about it. I haven't been there since 1997. You're excited about it.
I'm excited. I've never been to the Grove. I'm pumped. I'm absolutely jazzed to go to the Grove. I think that there are a lot of OU fans, though, that said maybe we'll catch the next one.
Yeah.
The next trip to the Grove. So it's only it's going to be interesting. Be sure you're locked in with us. Oklahoma Sooners onSI.com is the website. The next time we'll talk to anybody will be Monday night. We'll talk to the players. Your Britt Riddle's press conference will be on Tuesday per usual. Oklahoma Sooners onSI.com or on the YouTube. John Hoover Media. You know it. You love it. Please subscribe.
We assume that they're not going to rein in those player availabilities like they have in the last couple of years.
The last couple of years,
Midseason.
It's been on 2 nights. It's been condensed to 1. We're only on 1 night anyway, so I don't know how much more they can.
Reduce it to 0.
Well, if they're not going to do that. We're not going back. We're not going back. On the website, Oklahoma Sooners onSI.com, we've got your everything you need to know. Yikes. My takeaways. Bad. It was bad. Those are my takeaways. A really good story on Jackson Arnold, if I do say so myself. It was really introspective. Again, I would really encourage you to read it. I think that's pretty good. Bryce had a great story on what Danny Stutzman and Brent Venables had to say, how the defense is wearing their piece of this, which is not a lot. On Sunday, we'll have a bunch of things. The Sunday offering, recruiting roundup, all that will be there. Jacob Jordan, he deserves a moment in the sun. That's why I want to move it off of Saturday to Sunday, so he's not attached to whatever the hell this was. Who's got his big column on Brent Venables, where he's at. There are a lot of fans that are over the Brent Venables post-game experience, execution.
Yeah.
Who's going to dive into all that? We'll have all the PFF numbers, all that stuff. Look at the schedule. I'll write something eventually. I'm not there yet. My brain's still in a blender. Monday, more spillover content, all that stuff. So Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com is your place to be. On Wednesday, Men's Basketball Media Day is here. I know you're pumped. Porter Moser and crew. In the next 2 weeks, we're going to have Basketball Media Day on the men's side of things, Basketball Media Day on the women's side of things. Those number 10 ranked Oklahoma Sooners, Ginny Baranchek's crew, first time since 2010 that they're a preseason top 10 team. We're also going to have a Oklahoma softball newcomer availability day here in the next 2 weeks. So be sure you go to OklahomaSoonersOnTheSide.com, John Hoover Media on the YouTube, because we're going to quickly transition into a lot of basketball, a lot of softball coverage. The football coverage isn't going anywhere. We're not decreasing the football coverage, but we will be giving you other stuff to click on if that is what you so desire. Other than that, John, you and I will be boots on the ground in Oxford. I fear for what we may see.
Yes. It's like you said, Lane Kiffin's not going to take his foot off the gas.
It will be interesting. It'll be, hey, if nothing else, if you're not going to be good, be interesting, or be historically bad, and I hate to do this, I don't know if this team is interesting. They are historically bad by Oklahoma standards, though. So, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Please turn around. I know you don't believe this. I don't like coming in here and yelling about this stuff. And I sure don't like writing about a team where everyone's depressed when we're talking to them. It makes for bad content. Except for when Jackson Arnold is really introspective and Danny Stutzman. Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. I'm rambling. We're done. Sooners on SI Pod will be back on Thursday, recapping everything we learned on Monday and Tuesday. And then, like I said, we'll be in Oxford. We'll still go into Columbia. We're still going to Baton Rouge. That may be it. That may be the last trip of the year. We will find out. There's a bowl streak on the line, folks. That's what you're fighting for. I know that's what you like here in Norman. For whom, I'm Ryan Chapman. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday. Bye. Thanks for coming.